The information shared on LightBody Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to LightBody Radio.
Welcome to LightBody Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome to LightBody Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May, and today we have with us Timothy Ward. He is an expert longevity trainer, health and motivational coach, and speaker with over 30 years of experience transforming how people build strength, energy, and resilience. As the creator of the fitness quadrant and the longevity matrix, his proven systems deliver the definitive strategy for improving the three most powerful markers of longevity: muscle mass, heart health, and metabolic strength, helping people reclaim vitality and perform at their highest level for life. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Great to be here, Dr. Laura. I'm really excited about the show here. So let's dig in and really get to some of these issues.
Well, so I like to give our listeners an idea of who we're talking to. So tell us a little bit about your story, your evolution, and then yes, for sure, I do totally agree about your three most powerful markers. And so we'll definitely get into that. And then of course, your book and all the good things. So
Sure. So I'm on a lot of shows, and I always love when we start out this way because what a lot of people don't know about me is some of the early on hurdles I had to overcome. A little bit personal here, but all of us have these types of issues to some degree, I guess, but it'll explain a little bit how I ended up where I am today at 61 years old and an author and all that stuff. So when I was young, I grew up in a pretty rough household. I was physically abused, beat up. My brothers were, my mom was, that type of thing. Not fun, not always great to talk about, right? But it serves as a basis point for me, knowing how I ended up where I'm at, and I like people to sort of know that. So in and out of the hospital, all of that stuff, and people have it worse off than I did. So I'm not using this at all as any sort of a crutch or anything like that, because it's long in my past. But why I say this and why I talk about it is it's a storyline, and one of the things that was really stood out to me that I realize now at an older age is when I was, young, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, 12, 13 years old, I was very good at athletics. Sports came very natural to me. So in the darkness of my, abuse, which was every week, I found my happy place. I found the light, if you will, on a court or on a field playing sports. I was good at it. It felt so awesome to be propped up by my young teammates and the parents of these young teammates, or some of my teachers who knew I was getting physically abused. But that was back in the early 70s, mid 70s. So it's a lot different now, right? So So obviously, all I wanted to do was play sports 364 days a year. Okay, because it felt great. I was good at it. And so all of those good feelings, obviously us humans, we gravitate towards that stuff, right? We want to avoid the pain. We want to feel good more and more, right? So that whole journey led to, my high school years, 15, 16, 17 years old, where sports becomes really competitive. And, like a normal 16, 17-year-old boy playing basketball, baseball, football, so sort of the typical big sports that we see, even though I participate in other things now. I naturally started to work out in the high school weight room, right? I needed to be bigger, stronger, faster, all of those things in order to, stay on a starting team or get noticed or recognized by a college scout that was looking at our team. And I ended up, really committing to that journey of I'm gonna pump some iron. I'm gonna work out. Like I'm gonna do what the coach tells us, which especially back then was such a minute amount of knowledge, if any knowledge at all, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I got a decent amount of scholarships for sports in about 24 of them, Division III, Division II schools. I wasn't good enough to be D1 or anything, right? So it wasn't until my early 20s, maybe mid 20s, that I continued my journey of working out and really trying to learn about health and fitness and what it all means and how do you become better and stronger and all that stuff. And I met in a pretty big commercial gym that north of Boston. I live on the New Hampshire seacoast, right up here on the ocean. So I met a master's degree exercise scientist, a guy that I'd kind of watch in the gym, and I'm like, man, this guy is he's got some really interesting things he does with his clients. And he had athletes and typical people in their 30s and 40s, all that stuff. And one day he looked at me and he said, "You're doing it all wrong," because he saw my dedication.
I love it. You're doing it wrong.
Oh man! And I looked at him like, "What are you talking about, dude? I've been in the gym for 50. I know what I'm doing. You're a typical guy. I know what I'm doing, right?" So he said, "Why don't you sit down with me for 30 to 45 minutes and just let me explain that all your effort you're putting in, you're killing yourself, you're very dedicated, but you're going backwards." And guess what? In my mind, even at that age, I was like, you know what? That guy, he's right, because deep down, I knew I am losing strength. I am not really, moving the needle on myself. It's different for all of us when we're in our mid-20s. Working out sort of means something else, right? And we'll talk about that a little in the show here. But so I sat down with him, and this guy, he did work with the U.S. Olympic ski team, PhD stuff. Very, very, very bright. Not that great of a person, believe it or not, but that's besides the point. So I sat down and I was speechless when he finished about 50 minutes with me on how the human body actually works. He got into details that I seriously had never heard of, never even realized. And it sparked something inside of me that, probably looking back on my life, was a massive journey change for me. Because by nature, I'm very inquisitive. I really want to know how things work. Some people don't care about it. Just tell me what time it is. Don't tell me how to build a clock, right? That whole that whole argument, right? Well, I'm the guy that I want to know how to build a clock and tell time. So so that really put me on the map to understanding just how complex the human body is. So that led me to go on a journey. I actually started to work for him in my later 20s. He had a very big clientele, very big, deep scientific, business, more aimed to athletic performance, Division I athletes, a lot of pro athletes I ended up training. And I stayed with him for about 3.5 years. And I got an education that is so beyond what a typical trainer that got their certification on Sunday afternoon, because anybody can get a certification and become a personal trainer, right? This is one of my gripes in the whole fitness, wellness, longevity space. There is such a lack of education, and I don't mean that to be mean, because there's a lot of really super nice trainers. They want to do something great, but they don't really have either the educational background or the experience with people. Like, I've got a little bit of both. I've got experience with PhD level people that run major universities and colleges, is where my journey led me. So, you know, being employed by these people in these incredible platforms, I got such a background, front row seat on how the human body works. And of course, I've got certifications. I did some schooling, A&P 1 and 2, and blah, you know, all chemistry, all that sort of stuff, right?
Sure.
I never finished my degree, and I always like to make that clear with people. But what has happened is, in my journey, Laura, I have been able to put together over 30 years, really polish down what I would call an easier understanding for the general public, to understand how these mechanisms in the human body work. And I always tell people, I said, listen, but first and foremost, the human body is such an adaptive machine. It will adapt to really good stimulus, or it will try to adapt to really bad stimulus. So whatever you're signaling to your body through food, you know, toxic food, good food, exercise stimulus, and we'll talk a little bit about that throughout the show. Your body is an incredible adaptive machine. So I try to get people to start to understand, let's look at the good stuff you can feed your body that will trigger anabolic growth. It'll trigger better signaling. It'll really wake up everything that your God-given body already has inside of it. It is meant to operate at a really optimum level. And the first thing I do when I onboard or I speak in front of a group is, look, the first thing we have to do, and you mentioned one of my trademark systems is called the longevity matrix. And that longevity matrix really is 6 major points. And the very first thing we do, and this is the first 90 pages in my book, is you have to eliminate toxic nutrition. You can have the greatest intentions in the world of being healthy, the greatest workout routine. You could be hydrated, but if you've got a platform of toxic food, we'll talk a little bit about what that is. It brings the greatest workouts, the greatest intentions of somebody, brings it to its knees. So the very first thing we have to do is, what is toxic? What's the toxic world we live in? And it's not just food, obviously, right? We have a lot of different things with PBAs and plastics and tainted water and all these things. And I go over that in the book because I think it's such an important thing for people to really start to understand. Mass-produced foods in your grocery store, 98% of it is mass-produced. Cheap fillers, dyes, fake sugar, fake trans fats. It's more of marketing meant to look good and to get you to buy it. And listen, we're talking about a medical industry that's sick care. It's not the fault of all the dark. They're just in a system.
Right.
And I train a lot of doctors. Okay. They are managing sickness. They don't really know about the sort of the stuff that I know about in the other side of the railroad tracks, right? The preventative and preemptive issues. Okay. So I'm sure you could speak to this brilliantly. And you and I have a lot of things that we consider vital when we talk about health and wellness and people having the strength to live a quality life.
Right. Even the strength just to carry around their own body, their own bag of bones.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a huge topic. Is you first have to learn what is toxic food, how do I eliminate it, what are better choices, and why would I do that? So a lot of stuff that I do, I guess recently, the last couple of years, without me really realizing it, Lara, is also motivational. It's getting people to think about their greatest asset, their body, a little bit differently. Start thinking about it as an asset that's going to serve you really well.
Yeah.
It's not like a car that if you fail inspection, you can't drive it on the road. You go buy another car, right? Or you put a lot of money into that car to get up to stand. Your body, if your body fails inspection, you are heading down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do anything to change it, you are going to be a hurting person by the time you're in your mid 50s, 60s, certainly 70s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure you could speak to that.
Well, I was just going to say that I think the whole concept of aging, which, we've just been taught is natural. Oh, I'm just getting older. That's bullshit. Sorry.
It is. Hey.
Is this whole, it's the process of the deconditioning. And, or people say, oh, I'm falling apart. This is just part of getting old.
Yep.
I say, F that. I am not subscribing to that line of thinking or that, or any of those mantras, because that's essentially what they are. They're mantras that you keep repeating to yourself until you believe them. But if, like you said, if we understand how to eat and eat well for ourselves, and, you were talking about the grocery store, for sure, definitely. But I hate to say this, and this is going to maybe sound a little, too doomsday-ish, but even in the produce section, most of what's in there is engineered to be pretty, not nutrient dense. And so then people are like, well, what the hell do I do now? I can't even go to the grocery store.
We love Dr. Lara for sure. You are so spot on. We could go on for 5 hours on this show.
Probably.
Oh boy. You are absolutely so spot on. So I talk about, I don't know if people, I'm sure some of your listeners or you, or maybe not, have heard the example of how they train fleas in a circus, right?
No, I haven't heard this.
Okay. They put, 2,000 fleas in a big glass flask, and they put a clear plastic top on it. And they have those fleas in that thing for 48 hours. And the fleas are trying to escape, and they're bouncing everywhere, and they're bouncing up over the, cellophane plastic thing on the top. And then after 48 hours, they open the cover. And guess what all those fleas do? They stay in the cylinder because they've been conditioned. Oh, if I go up, I'm going to bump my head. This is the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And it's a deep psychological metaphor for how society gets conditioned to say, okay, I'm 59. You know what? I'm supposed to be out of breath when I walk up those stairs in the stadium or in a city or even my house, right? Or, my back or knees sort of hurt. And I guess I'm getting old. The cartilage and the synovial fluid in my knees, I'm supposed to feel this way. No, you're not. And kudos to you, Dr. Lara, because that is a mindset. You have to break it. Listen, I'm 61. I'll be 62 this year. I'm in very, very good shape. I consume my own advice in terms of living a certain lifestyle. My wife is 63, and she's in unbelievable shape. My two young boys in their mid-20s, same thing. We eat a certain way. We trigger our body through exercise and fitness. And we'll get into that in a second. And you know what? I plan on still fighting. I fight jiu-jitsu, a little bit of light MMA still, all that sort of stuff. And I'm rolling around, training and going, 3 rounds deep with kids in their, 28, 29, 30 years old. No problems. I'm mobile. My joints are healthy. I can generate strength. I have endurance, blah, 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 right? And I'm 61, and people are like, there's no way you're 61, dude. And I'm 61. And my wife is the same way. She's 63. She looks like she's 40. She doesn't really know. She's like, why don't my friends want to go to the beach with me? It's like, well, you're 125 pounds, about 9% body fat, and they always give her a hard time. You eat so much. how do you eat so much food and you have no fat on you? She's like, well, I eat enough to support my muscle. And, and I work out to stimulate my muscle so I'm not losing muscle mass. And that's something that we should really dig into a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
let's do that, because that's so key. And there's a lot of, at least from the media that I consume, leaders in the functional medicine space that are really coming out, like Dr. Gabrielle Lyons is the one that like really pops out in my head, that she is, really talking about muscle mass is key to you being more functional, not even just like a star athlete, but just functional as you get older. I mean, and we've known this for ages, both men and women, as after the age of 30, our muscle mass naturally declines because our hormones change. And that hormone balance helps maintain how we can not only build muscle, but keep it. And so what does that mean? That means that we have to be so much more intentional as we get older. It's not the time to go take a nap, lie down, say, oh, well, this is the beginning of the end. Sayonara. No.
You are so 100% right. Again. So by the time we hit 40, 43, we're starting to lose 1 to 2 pounds of muscle every year, the typical American, right? And let's back up even further than that. If you're a male and you're 39 years old, your life is half over. If you're a female and you're 40 years old, your life is half over. So, people, when I say that in front of an audience, 100 people sitting in there in a company, I'm talking to about the roots of your performance and your longevity. They sit there and look at each other, and it's always the ones that are 55 or 60 going, oh my, that means I've got 18 years left of my life, 20, if I'm going to fit into the standard, mortality rates, right? So I say, to your point, it is more important when you're 40 to 65 years old, more important, even 70, I'll push it to 70, that you pay attention and have a strategy on how are you going to maintain your muscle mass and your strength, because you are losing it at a rapid pace by the time you're 45 or 50. It is one of the most important tissues on your body. It serves many, many longevity factors. Okay. So you are right. That's one of the greatest things that people have to understand. Yes, I'm losing it. Okay. But how do I actually maintain it? How do I increase it? And I've trained thousands of people, and I have people in their 70s that have been with me privately for 8 years now. And these people are in unbelievable shape, both men and women. Okay. And everybody in the gym, they always are like, how is that? How is Sherry 69 years old? And how is John 74? I actually write about John in my book as a case study. Incredible. Probably the biggest turnaround I've ever seen in my entire career is John. I met him in a gym, and I nicknamed him Skinny Jimmy, because that's, before I knew him, that's what I would call him, right? This pencil thin, 6'1", 148 pounds. I would see this guy in the gym like every second I was there, killing himself. Hurt knees, hurt shoulders, hurt lower back. And I'm looking at this guy going, oh man, he's doing that exercise wrong again. He's burnt out. He's overtrained. And this guy, oh man. But I usually stay in my lane in the gym. I won't say anything. So he's listening to me. I'm onboarding a couple executives, and I'm going over biomechanics and all this stuff. And he's over listening, and he yells out, "That's why my knees and lower back hurt." And the three of us look at him like, you've been eavesdropping on us, And the reason I'm telling this story is this is one of the most important things people need to understand when you start talking about resistance training, the importance of it, but also the dangers of it. If you're not doing it properly, which plays into the science of biomechanics, exercise form, and why. And I go deep into this stuff. That's the problem. People, they end up getting hurt, and then one of the greatest things they could ever do, because resistance training triggers anabolic growth in our body. It maintains our muscle. You can't build or maintain muscle just by eating good. Definitely by doing cardiovascular work, you actually start to lose muscle off your body through a process called gluconeogenesis, right? And we'll try to sneak that in as well so people can understand that a little bit more. By the way, this is all in my book, all the stuff we're talking about. So look, so we know we're losing muscle mass, right? So let's talk about some numbers here. People like, Dr. Lyons and Dr. Atia and all these more famous, wealthy Hollywood doctors, right? they've got the budgets and they got the ghostwriters and all that sort of stuff. And so, I sort of see these guys, and, kudos to them. They're bringing attention to all these issues that we're talking about. And that's an important thing, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of their protocols that I see, that I follow, could be way better. And I mean that sincerely. Let's talk a little bit about some of the numbers associated with the nosedive and the decay in bodily function and strength and muscle loss as we age, right? So you go into a typical doctor appointment and they measure really 3 or 4 standard things is really all they measure, right? And here we go, right? We talk about high blood pressure. All right, you got high blood pressure, depending on how severe it is, you're talking about a 20% loss in years, right?
Well, they just lowered the threshold on that too.
I know. They just lowered it.
Oh, in the guidelines. And I'm just like, really? So you essentially just increased the profit margin of the pharmaceutical companies because I mean, there was not that much compelling. Like, if you look at the science behind the guidelines, and this is peer-reviewed, evidence-based, blah, 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 all the supposed to be the best of the best.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that compelling as to why like 10 points lower in your systolic or diastolic is going to make that much of a difference versus anyway. So, all right, keep going.
You are dialed in. You are right in there. So anyway, increased high blood pressure, right? We're talking about a 20-ish, 22% increase of dying younger. Your mortality rate changes, right? Type 2 diabetes, your risk of dying younger is about 30-ish%. Okay, that has to do with insulin resistance and all those things that I also.
So many things.
Oh, it's crazy, right?
No, diabetes is the number one, I think, most preventable chronic disease that we have. Okay, now keep going.
100%. Yep. So, we talk about obesity or overweight. Again, you're talking about, depending on the numbers and all that. So you're talking about, you have an increased risk of dying younger, about 32%, right? Then we go smoker. If you're a smoker, you have a 50% increased chance of dying younger than the averages, right? But here's what they never talk about. When you are in the lower part of strength for your age group, the bottom 10%, you have a 250% chance of dying younger. When you have low VO2 max, your heart and lungs, you don't have that cardiovascular strength anymore. When you're in the bottom 10% of your age group, men or women, you have a 400% increased chance of dying younger. These are direct markers on what you and I talked about opening the show. The 3 biological markers that matter for your longevity and your wellness. And we'll say it again. Number 1, muscle mass and strength, huge. Number 2, heart and cardiorespiratory health. And number 3, your metabolic vitality. Okay. These 3 things are what matters. And the reason that the public has such a hard time aging strong, aging into these headwinds called years are ticking by, you don't have the strength to age strong. Aging becomes too strong and it overwhelms you, so your quality of life plummets. You have to have answers for these 3 biological markers, and that's why I created the fitness quadrant. It's the 4 big pieces of a quality fitness program, okay? And I just want to say what they are quickly so people can sort of get a mental picture of what I'm talking about, All right. And then I'll talk about the longevity matrix, what wraps around my fitness quadrant. So the fitness quadrant, this is what I've put together over the years. And when I talk about this, people go, oh, wow, I've never heard it put this way. So imagine 4 boxes in a quadrant. The top left box is the R quadrant, stands for resistance. That's your resistance training quadrant. The top right of the fitness quadrant is the nutrition piece. Okay. The bottom left is the cardiovascular piece. The bottom right is the recovery piece. Those 4 pieces make up the fitness quadrant. Each one of those quadrants have a huge drop-down list of science and how to approach it the right way. And this is what we do when we onboard people. We go through these quadrants and we design a fitness quadrant for people. And it's something that they can get their heads around, okay? So the main thing, here's 2 big takeaways, right? Without getting into hours of discussion on all these things, just the awareness, right? 2 big takeaways. Wellness and longevity is a combination game. And what I mean by that, you can't just eat right and get the full benefit out of aging long and strong. You have to combine resistance training for muscle mass, for strength, tensile strength in the muscle, for joint health, the mobility in your shoulders. Connective tissue is all part of strength, okay?
Yeah.
You can't, so you need resistance training with nutrition. Now, let's talk about the heart and lungs, blood pressure, right? BPM, beats per minute, all that stuff, right? So people don't realize the heart is a muscle. And if it's trained properly through the right type of cardiovascular protocols, the left ventricle wall of your heart gets thicker. Your heart actually grows a little bit. It becomes a stronger pump, all right? So you combine that with the right nutrition that starts to clean up your arteries and your visceral fat around your organs and on the inside of your veins, right? Now, all of a sudden, you are talking about a combination that really starts to move the needle for people, and they can literally start to see visually changes. They start to feel it. And isn't this what we want? Why would you spend all your time working 60 hours a week, doing all this stuff in your life, investing in your 401k, and you've got you got $1 million, $2 million, but whatever it is that makes your boat float, right? And all of a sudden you hit 60 years old and you're physically bankrupt.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Why don't you start prioritizing and really learning? Because this is a knowledge-based conversation. Without the knowledge, you can't build a strategy on how to actually put a 2.5 to 3 hour a week. That's all we're asking of people, to put it together properly with the right protocols. You know, I went out on a limb in my book, and I have a couple chapters in there that I mean what I say, and I mean it in a way to help people. And one of the chapters is called Fake Fitness and Fake Nutrition. Most of the fitness that we see out in the world and society, it's not moving the needle. There's not adequate levels of the type of targeted training that people should do. And look, I'm not talking about 25-year-olds. I'm talking about people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. People can do this stuff, but they have to want to do it. They have to lend a reason. Why would I do? Why would I pay to really understand this stuff? Well, you want to add 10 years to your life, 10 quality years? Listen to people who've traveled down that road and really do have the expertise, because it'll make an impact across your entire life, your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, because we're all getting the years behind us. I mean, you can't stop time, but we can do things to manage and slow time down a little bit and squeeze really good years out of our life. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So I want to back up a little, because you said one thing when you were describing your 4-part matrix, and you used the word right, the right way. And a lot of people are going to say, like, well, what does that really mean? And you explained it, but I want to equate that word right with the word sustainable and approachable and implementable. That's the key. Like, it's not about, necessarily like how many reps on day one you can do or how much you can lift on day one. It's about building a plan and an approach that you can start with and then grow through and with as well. Because again, we haven't talked about, bone fractures, but that's also something that, if you break a hip or a femur or one of your, big mobility joints as an elderly person, which in the allopathic world means just greater than 65, which is not really that old. It decreases your life expectancy by up to 50% right off the bat. And people think, okay, well, I need to take some calcium and magnesium and maybe some vitamin D to help my bones. And maybe, but probably not. That's also a misnomer. What you need is muscle mass. That is what supports your bone structure. And when you lose muscle mass, that's when you start breaking things, because your body literally, again, doesn't have the strength to hold up your bag of bones. So
you listen, excellent points. I'm so glad you backed up and asked these pointed questions, because they're really vital, and I hope people can really listen to what I'm about to say and what your comments are adding to the conversation here. So look, let me start out by saying this. The worst two things people ask me is I get the phone call or the text or the email, or I see them out on the street, or hey, Tim, I got to talk to you. Listen, I have a wedding coming up in 7 weeks and I have to lose 30 pounds to fit. That is
sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
that's a non-starter. That's the number one mistake. The second thing is, oh my goodness, it's New Year's Eve. I got to make a New Year's resolution. I need to lose 25 pounds. Look, those are the two worst excuses to consider some fitness routine, right? Because those are quick fixes, and you hit it right on the head. The language we use, that I use in my speeches and my onboarding, are achievability, sustainability, and practicality. Those words, those descriptions need to enter the conversation when we're talking about a long-term game plan for you. So kudos to you for bringing that up, because I talk about all this stuff in my book, as well as bone density, osteoporosis, another fantastic point you're bringing up. And I want to get into a little bit of the science of what we do to address these issues. Okay. So let me dig back into the resistance training piece on the fitness quadrant, right? And all of this stuff is on my website. It's all in the book, and so hopefully people may venture over and pick the book up on Amazon or whatnot. So look, let's talk about resistance training. Most people think, especially women, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to get big and bulky.
Yeah, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to look like whatever. I don't know, like a bodybuilder.
Not going to happen.
Do you know? Like, do you know how much time, like literally time, how many hours is spent for people to look like that?
for you to look like, Helga from Russia, okay? Look. They won the genetic pool on muscle mass and bone density to begin with. Number two, most of them that you see as an example of this on the magazine, they're on big time steroids and blah, blah, blah. They spend 15 hours in the gym. They live, sleep, and breathe, hardcore training. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a different modality to address the issue of aging and maintaining your strength and everything. So resistance training, if you're doing it right, and we have a system, what we do, we have another trademark system called MIT, Modified Interval Training. There's a lot of science into it. I'll try to squeeze some of these points in for people to listen to. So resistance training, I call it the king of fitness and wellness, because it really is the most misunderstood. It's the most misapplied science. And here's what I mean by that. The human body, the muscle, if you stress out muscle enough, it adapts to that stress. And there's a lot of functions that happen when you lift heavy enough weight. The muscle wants to adapt. And what I mean by that is the muscle is going to say, well, wow, the central nervous system starts to fire, and the muscle goes, whoa, we're going to adapt and overcome. We're going to add more myofibrils to that muscle, more actin and myosin. We're going to add those little pieces, little contractile proteins inside a muscle belly, right? The sarcomere, right? So if you do it enough, you're going to actually start to increase the muscle. To take, for instance, your bicep, right? What I mean by adequate resistance is you can't grab a 5-pound dumbbell like they do in most group training classes or really inexperienced trainers, just because you don't want to lift heavy weight and you sit there and do 40 reps and you feel the burn of lactic acid and think you're going to gain muscle. That is not enough resistance to trigger hypertrophy. It won't happen. So you need to pick a weight that's heavy enough. Okay, so that 5-pound weight may be the perfect choice for somebody that's 76 years old, has never done resistance training, and they have a hard time pressing that 5 pounds in a shoulder press. They, by the 10th one, they can barely get that dumbbell up. For me, it's more like 60-pound dumbbell to struggle for my 10th rep. So when I say adequate resistance, the muscle will respond to adequate resistance, and it'll keep growing muscle if you feed it the right amount of resistance. Here's the problem. The human body has about 650 major muscles in it. If I took the skin off a human being, those muscles would be cut at all different angles. All right. So we have chains of muscle that need to be worked out in resistance training protocols a certain way to trigger them. So we have 3 major muscle groups: legs, back, and chest. Then we have secondary groups: biceps, triceps, shoulders, calves. And then we have stabilizer groups: a lot of your core muscles, quadratus, lumboris, right? All the iliac muscles in the lower back, the erector spinae region, all of it, right? So a proper training protocol will address these 3 groups, and they will be put together in a way, and the exercises will be explained so you don't injure yourself. And then they get layered into the right patterns, so you optimize your 45 minutes so your body actually starts to build muscle. Listen, I have a woman that's 83 years old. She's been with me for 4 years, could barely get up and down stairs without kind of bending over, holding her knees and all that stuff, right? Lower back was killing her. She's running the Boston Marathon next year at 84 years old.
Oh, wow.
She trains with me 2 days a week. That's all you need to really trigger the body. And it started out like she could barely squat, like with help. She now does what are called plyometrics. She'll hold on to TRX bands, go all the way down to a full squat, jump in the air, land smooth, jump in the 84 years old, people. So this adaptative remodeling that happens to the body is because the proper triggers were sent to the body, and we let that body adapt to that stress. We fed it enough protein so it could build the muscle, right? And then we gave it enough recovery time, 2 to 3 days, that we're ready for another cycle of working out, right? So we have this whole system, and this is what I mean. You have to have, there's so many variables with this stuff. The more variables you get right, and that's knowledge, oh boy, the faster you can move the needle on yourself. And this becomes what we refer to as high-level fitness protocols. Things that you can do, right? They're achievable. Things that you can do in your weekly time allotment, practicality, right? And then things that you can do for sustainability. You can do these for years on end. So we're launching an app. It's a great time to say this, on our website. It's probably a week to 2 weeks out. I'd say maybe mid-March, that we're going to give people access to the library of all of, not all of our workout, but dozens of our workouts. We have zone 1 for beginners, people that have never worked out before. We teach them the biomechanics. We give them, light workouts to start doing. We have zone 2, which is medium to a little bit more higher level, a little bit more aggressive workouts, right? We have private. Zone 3 is a private, if people want private protocols. I do that all the time for people. I literally get them on the phone. I design everything, their workouts, their diet, their cardio, and it's so awesome. I'm dealing with people from across the world that hear me on these shows, and I can't tell you how thankful I am to be able to have my story, my fitness and my expertise become part of their story of their life. It's just an incredible feeling for me. And I love when people reach out and start to read some of this material, start to get a little bit more serious about what they're doing. So resistance training, let me just answer your last question, which is an absolutely fantastic question. Bone density, major problem, especially with women with osteoporosis. I write about all this stuff I've talked about in the book as well. So think about a muscle being challenged with enough weight, enough pull on that muscle. The insertion in the origin of that muscle, right? It's got two ends to it, are attached to a tissue, tendons that attach to the bone. When that muscle is pulling, because you're trying to curl a 12-pound dumbbell or a 50-pound dumbbell, right? That muscle is pulling on the tendon. It then pulls on the bone. Okay. Now the bone has to say, whoa, I got to strengthen myself. That tendon's really pulling on me. I need to have the tensile strength in the bone to withstand that resistance. That is an example of adaptive remodeling, where the bone will start to add layers to it. Your bone density will go through the roof if you do this the right way. Forget about the one shot a year that they give you. That's a short-term thing that I don't even know the stats on it, but my mother got that, and my mother never really was into the training and fitness, and she's paying for it now. It breaks my heart, but she's an artist, and she was more into, I'm not really into that. I'm like, okay, well, this is another thing I tell people. I'm sure fitness and wellness are going to be your number one priority sooner or later, by choice or by default.
Yeah.
Remember that statement. If you aren't preemptive and get out in front of it a little bit, even though you don't want to, it will be your number one priority in your life. Don't make it too late that you can't recover some of these systems that you can recover now.
Yeah.
I beg people to listen to that, because it just makes their life better if they adhere to the stuff that you talk about, Laura, and somebody like me out in the field doing all this, right? So critical. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up against a hard stop here. So what is the last thing that you want to leave our listeners with today? And then you have mentioned your book and your website. So let's make sure we tell people where they need to go to find out more and they get your book too.
Yeah, this is something we just incorporated, which is just having a huge response. So we now, we've addressed the whole supplement industry, right? And I didn't even get into the food thing you talked about.
Yeah, we might have to have you back just to talk about the supplements.
Oh, I would love to. Okay, so I own a global soil patent for food production, the lack of minerals in the soil. It produces nutrient weak foods. So one of the reasons people are so sick and ill and all that stuff, there's no nutrients left in our food anymore. So I address the supplement thing. We have a new program. We have 120 blood panel biomarker we do for clients. All right. Typically these are over $1,000. We have them a $349 program. We do them with our team. Okay. And then we take those biomarkers, we show you your biggest deficiencies. We actually make our own whole food supplements in Arizona now, and we ship them directly to people. They're pre-digested, so the bioavailability is like 92%. Most people waste money on toxic supplements on Amazon, Walmart. They're coming from third world countries. They're full of fillers. This is the real deal. So that's on our website. If anybody wants to go into our product section, they can read about how that's done through LabCorp. Very simple process. So we give a customized supplement according to your blood deficiencies. It's only $149 a month for all these supplements that we put in a package for you. We make it foolproof, where it's already packaged into 8 different tablets that we design for your deficiencies. You get a blood panel dashboard. It's only yours. You can see it. And it is really one of the easiest ways to start fortifying your body with a true blood panel, so you know exactly it's a targeted supplementation. You're not guessing with some multivitamin or magnesium or calcium that you think you need. We actually get down into the diagnostic. So it's very inexpensive. We made it affordable for people to come on. And again, I would urge people to at least read about it on my website, which is lifestrong.net, www.lifestrong.net. And there's a whole host of information on there. You can get my book through there, or you can go right to Amazon and get the book called The Goat Within. It's a bestseller. And I just urge people, look, just do it. I'm accessible. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, it's right through the website. They can email me. They can schedule a free call with me if they really want to have some questions asked. I give everybody, I think it's a 10 or 15-minute phone call, and I get a lot of calls, but I love talking to people. And really, my mission is to help them start making the right choices to enhance their lives. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I really want to come back, because I could go on.
Yeah, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface.
Oh, we didn't even touch it, right? So
yeah,
if we could ever do that, oh, that would be fantastic.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Tim Ward, and his book is The Goat Within. So definitely check that out. If you are looking for some lab work, I checked out the list. He has the list on the website of what all it entails. It is very comprehensive. And that is a fantastic price, because even I would be hard pressed to get all of those labs together for a client at that price. And unfortunately, I tell people one of the most expensive pieces of working with me is not me. it's the labs that I need to order to assess where you are and where we need to, start filling in the gaps. So, so it's great that you've found a way to like really make that affordable for people.
Yeah, for sure. It's an easy choice, and it's a replacement cost. Most people are buying $100, $200 worth of supplements every month. This is a replacement. It's not added money. So, people think about it, check it out. But again, what a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We will catch you on the next episode. If there was anything in this episode that you're afraid that you missed, there are links. They're in the show notes. That's at drlaramay.com/podcast. And just look for Timothy Ward's name, Tim Ward. And that's where the links will be for his book, for the website, for the lab work, all the things. So, all right. We'll catch you on the next episode, everybody. Thank you for joining me on LightBody Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.